and gentlemen, welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. We have resumed in-person meetings with a limit of 50% public participation, which is allowed. Until the time when we will allow 100% capacity in the council chambers, citizens may continue to submit comments for items on today's agenda, and they should do this electronically. I encourage comments to be submitted early. They will be read at the appropriate time during the meeting. Comments will be accepted up to the conclusion of the vote of the item. Comments may be submitted through the City of El Cajon's website, which is cityofElCajon.us. Look under Agendas and Minutes and go to Video Streaming, and you'll see a button to submit your comments. The meeting is now called to order, and I'd like to ask our city clerk to call the roll.
All council members are present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, would you stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the April 27th, 2021 meetings and the agenda of the May 11th, 2021 meeting in accordance with state law, council, and housing authority policy. We have one presentation on today's agenda, and I'd like to ask Police Chief Michael Moulton to come and tell us about that. Chief, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Council. Excited to come here today and give you a short presentation on our drone program.
Wonderful.
We started the program back in 2018, and at that time it was an emerging technology, so we started kind of slow and cautiously, and you'll get to see kind of the fairly robust program that it's been grown into. Some of the things we'll talk about is what the current team looks like, what their training looks like, the fleet of drones that we have, and what the capabilities of them are. And to do that, I'm going to bring up Lieutenant Randy Soulard, who actually created our program, and Sergeant Joe Crawford.
Hi, gentlemen. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Get this computer going here. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Lieutenant Randy Soulard from the El Cajon Police Department Drone Unit. Along with me is Sergeant Joe Crawford. And like Chief Moulton mentioned, we just want to talk a little bit about where our drone program started, kind of where it is today, and then where we'd like to be moving forward. And then we'll also talk a little bit about our current fleet of drones and what their capabilities are. To kick things off, just want to start with our mission statement for the drone unit. The mission of the drone unit is to augment the efforts of the police department in the delivery of public safety services with the use of unmanned aerial systems, also known as drones. So a little bit about the history of our unit. The department began researching drones as a public safety tool as early as 2015, and our first pilot was licensed by the Federal Aviation Administration in December of 2018. Since then, the drone unit has completed more than 100 missions and has provided mutual aid support to 6 local and federal law enforcement agencies in our area. Our first official mission took place in May of 2019 with a single pilot and a simple drone that cost about $1,000. Today we have 9 team members, including 7 pilots and 2 pilots that are in training, and all of our pilots attend basic, intermediate, and advanced drone pilot training and are licensed by the Federal Aviation Administration. In 2019, the department purchased 2 Enterprise aircraft, and then we received 2 additional drones through a donation. The current drone fleet consists of 4 Mavic Enterprise drones and our flagship, which is the Matrice 300, purchased in June of 2020. And a little bit more about our drone fleet. We put together a little video for you. The Mavic 2 Enterprise drones are ultra-compact, portable, folding drones and can be deployed in about 1 minute from a stored condition, such as from a patrol vehicle or fire engine. They have a flight time of 30 minutes and a top speed of 45 miles per hour and have a maximum range of 5 miles. These Enterprise drones include a modular accessory kit containing a spotlight, public address speaker, and an anti-collision strobe for night missions. These aircraft have obstacle avoidance and GPS positioning capabilities through an array of sensors on all sides of the airframe. The form factor of the Mavic 2 Enterprise drones makes them ideal for deployment in the field by first responders. The Matrice 300 is the flagship aircraft in our fleet and is one of the most capable drones available for public safety applications. The Matrice 300 has a 45-minute flight time, a top speed of more than 50 miles per hour, and a maximum range of 9 miles. Because it is weatherproof, the Matrice can be flown in inclement conditions, including rain, when necessary. In addition to the onboard camera for navigation, the Matrice is equipped with wide-angle and zoom cameras, a high-resolution thermal imaging sensor, and a laser rangefinder for measuring distance. The thermal sensor allows us to locate people by their heat signatures. This is very effective in locating missing persons or in area searches for suspects fleeing or hiding from police. Like the Mavic, the Matrice has 360-degree obstacle avoidance and GPS positioning through an array of sensors around the airframe. The Matrice has a hot swap battery system, which allows the flight crew to change batteries without powering down the aircraft. This saves crucial seconds during a critical incident and allows for increased time on target and persistence at a public safety event.
So this will be drone use capabilities to highlight the uses, basically scenarios, and it's going to show how we have a rapid response time due to the fact that we can avoid street traffic and take a direct path to response to calls. We don't have to wait for the sheriff's helicopter. It's much cheaper to operate a drone than it is to operate the helicopter. And we have the ability to live stream over a secure network straight to the watch commander. So this first incident is going to be a wanted person. The person was fencing stolen police radios at a local pawn shop. When the police officers arrived to contact the person, the suspect fought with the officers and then fled on foot, and they lost him in a foot pursuit. They set up a perimeter, and they weren't able to spot the subject. And you can see here that the drone got up overhead and was able to find the subject hiding under this mobile home. And if not for the drone response, the officers wouldn't know that he had hidden under this area. We were able to call in assistance from a sheriff's canine, and the canine was able to go locate the subject hiding under the mobile home. The second incident that we have is a hot prowl residential burglary that occurred. When the officers responded, the suspect got into a foot pursuit with the officers. And you can see the subject here in the center of the screen, and he's running toward the edge of the screen there. And I want to pause it right here. There's a little shed in the back of this building that the suspect was able to get into the backyard and hide in this shed before the officer rounds the corner. And if you look at the fence at the end of the property, there's a board missing. So for an officer responding to this backyard and see a board missing, he might think that the suspect had jumped the fence and continue on the path. So if not for the drone, this suspect could have gotten away as well. And we'll let this play out. We have direct communication with the officers on the ground. We're able to radio exactly where the suspect is. They're able to go straight to that shed, locate the suspect. And another thing that highlights is the video evidence. That it's the same person that was running from the hot prowl burglary to the same person that we caught at the scene. This next incident is a wanted person. This subject was involved in a domestic dispute. There was a restraining order violation, and the suspect had left possibly armed and either homicidal or suicidal. And the following morning, an officer located the suspect's truck in this empty parking lot. And due to the fact that he was possibly armed and dangerous, we got the drone overhead. And we could see in plain view with the drone that he had a shotgun and a pistol in his lap, and he appeared to be sleeping in the truck. So the capability of the FLIR, we were able to see that there was no heat signature, and in fact the subject was suicidal and had committed suicide. So it was able to allow for a safe approach for the officers to get eyes on without having to send an officer up to the scene. The next incident is a commercial burglary at one of our local fun parks. It's a very large property that the officers had to search, and when the drone got overhead, it was able to find the point of entry, which is the smashed window that you can see. The fact that the drone was able to find that, they coordinated a perimeter with the officers on scene just as the suspect was running out. And the suspect ran straight to where the officers were set up because the drone had set up a perimeter with them. This resulted in no use of force and a safe arrest because the drone was able to set up a good perimeter. And there's the second suspect coming out of the building there. This next case is cross-training with local regional agencies. This is a training with Escondido PD and their tactical team, one of the K-9 units. In this scenario, a suspect is hiding in an elevated garbage bin. It would be unsafe for an officer to have to approach that bin to clear it by poking his head over that bin if this suspect was armed and dangerous. The drone was able to locate the suspect, and were able to direct the K-9 in for a search. And the key to that scenario is safety, not having to send an officer in. This next incident that is coming up, this is a vehicle collision involving a train that occurred in Escondido PD. The fire department responded to this train, and it was a possible hazmat incident. And so they were concerned to approach this train because of the possible hazardous material. And they were able to fly the drone in, look at the placard on the train, and discover that it was not a hazardous material. They were able to radio and call off resources, and then the fire department was able to make a safe approach and put out the fire. So again, it saves time, it saves money, and it saves resources. This incident here is another regional assist. This is a national city that called for a mutual aid with a suspect that they had just been in a shooting with. This person was wanted for a previous shooting that occurred with a bounty hunter about a week earlier. And this was the middle of the night. There was no other flight crews available. The Astrea helicopter was down due to inclement weather. So we were able to send a drone team to go help search a very large area of the freeway shoulder. And we were able to do this with a FLIR. They located what could have been a couple of hot spots. They weren't sure if it could have been a person. So we were able to make a safe approach with officers and eliminate some of these hot spots. And in this case, this hot spot turned out to be a cat. And you can see it running away. And then one last case, we're able to use the drones when we do a search warrant service to provide overwatch for perimeter, check for fleeing suspects, check for hazards in yards such as dogs or suspects lying in wait. We're able to use multiple drones to get different angles, and it really just maximizes safety for the tactical team. If there was some sort of incident or hazard, we were able to hit the pause button and withdraw our team and be able to de-escalate with crisis negotiation or some other resource. All right, and then Lieutenant Soulard is going to come talk about the future of the drone unit.
Thanks, Joe. So we talked a little bit about where we came from, kind of where we are today, and now we want to talk a little bit about where we'd like to be in the future. And that is with Drones as First Responder Program, or known as a DFR. And essentially what a DFR is where you deploy a drone either in addition to or in place of a manned police unit. Some of the benefits of having a DFR program. It accelerates an emergency response. It reduces response time, which is a big one for us. It maximizes efficiency in the deployment of personnel and resources. And it keeps the community and first responders as safe as possible, which is really what it's all about for us. You may be familiar with the DFR program that's being run by the City of Chula Vista and the Chula Vista Police Department. Chula Vista PD is the only police agency in the country that's participating in a pilot program to integrate drones into the national airspace. And over the past 2.5 years of their program, they found that drones were first on scene almost 50% of the time, and were able to clear calls for service, oftentimes without the need of a manned police unit 25% of the time. So it's pretty significant. And they've also been able to cut their response times literally in half since they began their DFR program. So Chula Vista has really kind of paved the way for other cities like us who are looking to take advantage of that opportunity to provide a higher level of service to the community. Another one is Escondido PD. We actually work really closely with Escondido and their drone team. We're kind of building our programs together, and we're learning a lot from each other as we grow. They recently had a DFR operation up in their city, up in Escondido, and they invited us to participate, which we gladly accepted. So here we are, we're on scene. That's our Matrice 300 drone on the landing pad there. You may recognize the white van. It's one of our old ACO vans that the team over at City Shops was able to repurpose for us. They brought that van back to life, and now that's our operational vehicle for the drone unit, so paying it forward.
Luxury, huh?
Luxury, that's right. So there we are at our landing zone, all set up, ready to go. We responded to a lot of calls that day, but one of the calls we responded to was a serious injury collision at a major intersection. And the drone was among the first units on the scene and was able to evaluate for other resources and coordinate ground units for traffic control and containment. And as you can see, the drone is acting as a first responder and is in the air when the driver is being stabilized and extricated from the vehicle for transport to the hospital. Once the collision scene is secure, a different kind of drone is used as an investigative tool to document and map the collision scene using sophisticated mapping software. Documenting a collision scene with a drone takes a fraction of the time that it normally does using traditional tools, and that really allows the officers to reopen the roadways faster, which saves significant time and resources. So this is just one small example of the different ways drones can be used as a force multiplier and the benefits of having a drone on scene quickly. So in planning our own DFR here in the city of El Cajon, we identified the rooftop of City Hall as being a potential ideal landing zone for DFR operations. And that's because it's centrally located in the El Cajon Valley. It's above a lot of the tree lines and rooftops in the city, which gives us great field of view. And you can see Joe doing a range test here up on the roof of City Hall. And what we found is City Hall being the bullseye in this target here. Our drone, we can still maintain visual line of sight on that aircraft for up to a mile away, which is a requirement of the FAA. And the zoom capabilities of the camera that we have on that drone can push that operational range out an additional mile. So essentially, the area you see here in red is a 1 mile radius around the City Hall building, and then the area in blue is the 2 mile radius. And with the help of our crime analysts, we were able to identify the areas of the city that had the highest volumes of priority calls for service. And as you can see from the overlay, those areas are well within the operational range of the Matrice 300, which is pretty significant. And we were able to do that. Any area within that operational range we can get to in about 60 to 90 seconds, which is pretty amazing. And that's just because the drone can get there as the crow flies and not have to deal with traffic signals, traffic congestion, and other emergencies they may encounter on their way to the actual call. So that's kind of a game changer for us. So in closing, it really comes down to decision quality data. Drones add a layer of real-time situational awareness from a safe vantage point to assist in tactical decision making and to manage resources on the ground more efficiently. Drones give incident command more decision quality data to make the best, most safe decisions possible to resolve public safety incidents. It just puts more eyes on the decision-making process and provides actionable aerial intelligence. And to us, it's become the ultimate de-escalation tool, because by sending a drone, there's no interaction between an officer and a member of the public, so there's physically no opportunity for an escalation, which is kind of a game changer for us. And that's it. So in closing, just like to invite anyone who's interested, join us on one of our training days. Come fly with us. Might even let you take control of the drone for a little bit if you'd like. So open invitation for that.
Thanks so much. And,
You're welcome.
Great presentation. I appreciate both of you officers coming out and informing me of this. I'm really impressed. Obviously, to me, the greatest part of this is it seems to keep officers more safe. And I think that's invaluable. At least there's any questions from the council. Go ahead.
Great presentation. I assume that you have some kind of defense from bad guys who might have the ability to do something to a drone. You've thought about that, I assume.
We have. There are some counter-drone classes that are going on right now through one of the facilities that we use for training. It's one of those areas that's such a new technology. The technology used against drones is also developing, and so it's kind of a never-ending battle, everyone trying to stay on top of the technology as it grows. But yeah, that's always a concern for us, and just ways to mitigate our drones being intercepted or tampered with by someone.
Safety was a word you used a lot during the presentation. Certainly with Astria, they're faced with laser in the eyes, so that's an issue for them where this doesn't face that, so that's a safer technology, if you want to call that. There's also a buzzword or a concern or a word you hear out in society a lot today called de-escalation. And I think this does offer the benefit of de-escalation, which I didn't see up there, but boy, it sure is, because if you have somebody in a dumpster that you can't see, it is also safer for the bad guy in a sense that you may not face a situation where a police officer has to do something that he or she was not prepared for. So it also helps de-escalate situations, I think, also by letting officers know ahead of time what they're about to face. The truck was a great example. You know, you could look into the truck and know what's going on and not have to send an officer to go head-to-head with somebody in case that person is there alive at that point. So I think it does have that great de-escalation quality as well.
It's been outstanding for that purpose. Yeah, just the valuable seconds that it saves, and just getting that situational awareness of what you're actually going into before you send officers in is huge. It greatly increases our safety for the officers and for the public. So,
I think this is one of the most exciting public safety technologies I've seen in my 25 years as an elected official, and I'd be interested in seeing what resources you need to make this go even further. Everybody wins here, the public safety officers and our citizens. This is just a fantastic idea.
Well, city council meetings are always exciting, but this is especially exciting, seeing drones. And if the firefighters were here, I think they'd be a little jealous. But my question would be, first of all, great presentation. Thank you for what you do. It looks like you're leveraging that asset and maximizing those assets to the greatest potential. So we appreciate that. My question would be, do you guys use the video in training purposes kind of as an instant replay? What do we do? How can we improve on the response of our officers on the ground? I feel like sports background, you go to the instant replay, you say, what did we do well? What didn't we do well? How can we improve? Have you incorporated that into training? I know it's a new technology that you guys are leveraging right now, but is that something that you guys are looking to do in the future?
Yeah, Sergeant Crawford is actually our a sergeant in our training division, and so I'm going to let him take this one. He's probably got a good response for that.
So we like to train with our tactical units. We recently trained with the SWAT team. We trained with the K-9 team. And when we have those trainings, we have scenarios. So it's replaying the scenario and letting them see what they could have done better. It's also training command for what they're going to see in a live view of an incident. So just familiarizing themselves with the technology and knowing what they're going to be able to use or not use in a real-time situation. So we do that, yes.
Great. Michelle?
Okay, to piggyback on my colleagues' questions about video, so you keep those on file? And how long?
So if it was a real situation, we upload it as evidence, and it would stay with the case through adjudication, through the normal retention process, just like any other evidence on a case. For training, we keep those videos in training files so we can use them for presentations and or any other training stuff that we would use.
And would, if you were to use a drone during a pretty hot incident, would they be released just like body cam footage?
So I'll probably let Lieutenant Soulard handle that as our PIO.
That's actually a really good way to put it. We kind of think of it as a body cam in the sky, for lack of a better term. Anywhere a police officer can be legally, the drone can be legally, and the drone has a camera on it, just like the officers do. And so we treat the footage from the drone very much the same way we do with body cameras.
Because it seems to me that having that drone up there gives you a different perspective on the situation. So on the ground, everything's going to be chaos and lots of noise, and people are going to see what's right in front of them. But looking from above, from a God point, you can see it more open, and it would seem like it would add to the case. Thank you again for presenting. I was well done, and I'm excited for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, we do. Agenda number 23, which is the last agenda item, which is on closed session, we'd recommend that be removed from the agenda.
Okay. Council members, any agenda changes? No. Okay, we're at consent items now. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion, according to the recommendation listed below. With the concurrence of the City Council, a council member or a person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any consent items? Staff?
No, sir.
Angela, do we have any speaker cards on this?
No comments were received, sir.
All right, make a motion then to approve the consent items.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We're now at public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, or successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, City Council and Housing Authority members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, did you receive any comments?
Yes, sir. We have two comments. The first one is a person in attendance, and the second one is online, submitted online. And the gentleman in attendance is Jeff Lashmet.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Good afternoon. Yes, I think the fire department and Chief Swaney would like to have a drone.
I'm sure they would. Actually, I think they have access to the drones. Yeah.
Well, I hope so. Oh. My name is Captain Jeff Lashmitt, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today on a matter that's very important to me. I grew up in the city of El Cajon, went to school here, and worked for the El Cajon Fire Department for 37 years. I retired in 2017 on a service retirement. Within months, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer. In 2018, I had surgery to have my prostate removed. However, the cancer has returned. Currently, I'm undergoing 7 weeks of radiation treatment. The workman's compensation process established the cancer as work-related, and that because of my complications, I would not have been able to return to work if I was not already retired. Cancer is a presumptive diagnosis in the firefighter's line of work, based on all the chemical and biohazard exposures inherent with the job. I'm here today because I've been attempting to be granted a disability retirement instead of a service retirement. At the time of my retirement, I was being monitored for cancer, but I didn't have a diagnosis. And due to an unfortunate administrative error, I was not advised of the timeline to request this change. Ultimately, as I've found out with this process that has taken way more of my time than I wish it has, that the city holds the authority to determine retirement status based on the contract with PERS and directs PERS to make changes and administer my retirement benefits. This adjustment of retirement status does not raise my retirement benefit or cost the city anything. It will, however, provide me with a small tax benefit as a disabled employee. For 37 years, I answered the alarm when people needed help. Today, I would appreciate your help and support as I recover from my work-related illness. I have a meeting scheduled tomorrow with PERS and a city representative at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. And it is my sincere hope that the representative can be instructed to approve this change in my retirement status with my sincere appreciation. Thank you very much for your time and attention to this matter.
Well, first off, Captain Lockman, I want to thank you for your 37 years of service. I mean that. That's a lot of time. And I'm sure I'm sure you saved a lot of lives. And
it was a rewarding career. I appreciated everything I was able to do for the people of El Cajon.
We're thankful. And second off, before we get started, I want to say that I'm sorry that you're battling cancer. That's a rough one, and our prayers are with you. Now let's get to this item so I can see what we can do. I got to admit that this is a little beyond my knowledge base, so I'm going to have to ask our city manager where we stand in this. I think the issue is retirement status and the retroactive, I guess, the ability to apply that retroactively, and I don't know the answer to this.
Council, Mr. Mayor and Council, first of all, you don't have authority to give direction to staff because it's not on the agenda right now, but I think it's important to point that out. Second of all, because Mr. Lashman has a hearing tomorrow, I can't go into a lot of details, but I can tell you this. We contract retirement services with CalPERS, and CalPERS follows state law when it comes to how to become eligible for a disability retirement. At this point, we've been following the books, and we do not think that that is possible, that is the purpose for the hearing tomorrow. And if CalPERS differs, then we can change our position. But at this point, we believe we're following state law. But again, I don't want to go into much more detail than that.
Okay. Counselors, do you want to add?
No, there's not a whole lot much more I think I can add to that, to what Mr. Mitchell had said. Yes, there is a hearing tomorrow morning, and yes, the city has not consented or approved the industrial disability retirement for Mr. Lashman, and he will have his ability to make his case before the board tomorrow morning.
All right. Before we talk, Mr. Lemon, let's see if there's any comments or questions from the council. No? So it seems like we're kind of at this point waiting to see what happens tomorrow. Could you go to the hearing tomorrow and then come back and report back what happened? Maybe it all gets resolved.
Well, that's my concern at this point. The city has already sided with PERS. They've already agreed to not accept my application based on what I said, administrative error, and the incorrect information or incomplete information I got. And there, yes, there's rules for mistakes are made and all that kind of stuff, but the bottom line is the PERS never contacted the city in the proper method either in terms of explaining that as a contracting agency, they had the responsibility to decide my disability, not the state.
I understand there's a disagreement about about how this should be handled. I'm hoping that you get fair treatment tomorrow at the hearing.
Well,
and if you don't, I think you should come back and talk to us.
Well, then the cart's already out of the barn. And I will say there have been people. Miss Megan Blake has been helpful. I would say other conversation I've had with staff have not been so helpful. Part of the problem I've had with this process is that when PERS canceled my application, the city assumed, and I tried to explain to them, that the case was not closed. Evidence, I have a hearing tomorrow. And this was last year I've been dealing with this. So I'm looking forward to this being over. I don't need the stress in my life at this point, and I would like to enjoy. But I would have appreciated some support or feeling a valued employee of the city. But that...
Well, from our perspective, I mean, I speak for myself, but I'm sure I speak for the whole council. We absolutely value your service. And I'm in a situation where I'm being told I have no ability to make any decision on this, so I have to let the process go through the process. But, we do value and we pray for a safe recovery for you and many, many long years of happy life.
Well, again, I just wish, and for the future, employees wouldn't have to go through this kind of process. This is, like I said, since 2018. So, but I appreciate your council's time and listening. And I hope to have a fair hearing tomorrow. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Captain. I appreciate you coming.
Sir, the last comment, again submitted online, it's an anonymous comment, and it reads, all relief aid must go to city services. Any dime of relief that goes to police says the city cares only about protecting property, not life, values humans over things. Make this budget reflect this community's needs, not your fears and usual coping mechanisms that have led to brutality and dead citizens. Put people first. Send every dime possible to services that don't invest in weapons and armored trucks. End of comment.
All right, thanks, Angela. Okay. There are no written communications on today's agenda. There are no public hearings on today's agenda. We have 4 administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 12 is for interviews for the Personnel Commissioner. I'll ask staff to tell us about this.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Last January, the City Council authorized staff to release a notice of 2 openings on the Personnel Commission, and on March 9th, you filled one of those openings. The other opening is a little bit unique. It actually is a position that is to be recommended by the existing 4 members of the Personnel Commission and then brought to the City Council for consideration. Staff brought actually opened up the nomination through our Personnel Commission, and our Personnel Commission is moving forward 3 possible individuals to select to fill that position. Ms. Megan Howell, Jason Martinez, and Robert Islas Jr. Those individuals had applied for the position in the past, and their applications are included as part of the staff report. I believe at least 2, if not 3, of the members of these individuals are here. The council has a couple options. Option 1 is you make a selection based on your review of their applications. Option 2 is you conduct full interviews like you have in the past. Or option 3 is that you have some discussion. If there's a need to ask them questions, then they're available to ask any questions. But staff is here to assist with the process if you need any. But turn the time over to council.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it, Graham. So my suggestion would be, since we've gone through this already and there's 3 people for 3 positions, that we go ahead and appoint the 3 to the 3 positions.
Oh, Mr. Mayor, sorry, there's 1 position and there's 3 applicants.
Oh,
Sorry.
I misunderstood. Okay, well, then I think we probably need to go through the interview process. Okay. Well, why don't we start with Megan Howell? Hi, Ms. Howell. How are you?
I'm fabulous today. Thank you. How are you?
Fabulous is good. All right.
Very good.
So, why don't you tell us why you'd like to be a personnel commissioner?
Absolutely. First, thank you for having me here. I actually heard about the opening from Frank Carson, your Director of Parks and Recreation. I've been a resident here in El Cajon for 25 years. I live right up the hill in Fletcher Hills. Went to Fletcher Hills Elementary and then middle and high school in La Mesa, and then college here in San Diego. I currently work for the City of La Mesa. I am their Adult Services Recreation Supervisor, so I supervise the 18 and up recreation as well as several of their community events, their Flag Day Parade. I oversee their Community Relations and Veterans Commission as the staff liaison, as well as report to our City Council. So I'm very familiar with the city employee side of things. I also have a unique position where I oversee my department or my division's budget within my department. And so I know sometimes the balance of the wants of the employees and the cost of living increases and benefits increases and things that we all desire in our positions sometimes aren't just feasible when it comes to looking at the general fund and how those monies need to be spent. And I think that it would give me a very unique position to help resolve any potential disputes or issues that might come up with the Personnel Commission.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I remember you from last time. Very, very impressive resume, and I appreciate all the work you're doing with Parks and Rec, and that's great. Let me see if there's any questions for you on the staff, on the council. All right, I think we're good. Megan, thanks very much. We'll go ahead and interview all 3 candidates, and then we'll make a decision.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Jason Martinez, are you here? Hi, Jason. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you again, everyone, for having me here. My real reason for wanting to be a personnel commissioner is just to give back to the city of El Cajon. As I said in the interview a few months ago, I've been a lifelong resident of El Cajon, went to high school at Valhalla High School. I worked for 30 years part-time for the City of El Cajon Recreation Department from 1986 to 2016, primarily as a youth sports coach, but I also served 7 years as an operational director at Hillside Recreation Center. My primary career has been as a public educator in Grossmont Union High School District for 25 years. I really just see myself as someone who helps resolves issues, whether that's wearing my hat as a school counselor and dealing with disputes from student to student, whether that's dealing with disputes from student to parent, or kind of the common one is maybe between teacher and student. So I may not have the traditional work background that someone might have in this position, but I really just have that desire to be more and more a part of El Cajon.
Thanks.
So
Let me see if there's any questions. Thank you, sir. How many years did you work as a part-time?
30, from age 18 to 48. It's amazing. My son was asking about that the other day, and he didn't get the 30 years part as a 12-year-old. He just got the part. He's like, Dad, you're old.
Yeah.
So I'm like, not old, but not young either. So thank you again, everyone. I really appreciate the time.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. All right, Robert Islas. Hi, Robert. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. How are you doing?
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. As I mentioned last time with my experience, I serve San Diego State University. I've been at the campus now for this is my 29th year on the campus. I serve as a union steward. I'm also the union chapter president. I serve on the legislative committee statewide for the CSU, that employees union. As part of my job as a union steward, I represent employees, and I also do investigations where they're warranted. On some occasions, I tend to work very closely with management. We try to find solutions that provide the best outcome not only for the employee, but also for the campus. Additionally, I work as an administrative investigator for the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. I'm relatively new to that position, and again, it's determining administrative issues and writing them up, doing an investigation, writing up the material, and then presenting it for further study. And I appreciate your time.
Any questions? I've got a completely non-related question, but I heard a news story today about Coast Guard ship in the Straits of Hormuz. What's the Coast Guard doing way out there in the Middle East?
That part I don't know. I know we have Coast Guard units that are assigned overseas. They're usually helping host countries with coast protection.
I had no idea. All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir.
So let me just ask, are there any speaker cards on this item?
No, sir, no cards.
Okay. Well, council, it's a tough decision. They're all great. I think anyone would do a good job. So I'm open to discussion or a motion. Gary?
Well, as a former board member of the Grossmont-Cuyamaca Community College District, I know what a tough job it is to be a counselor, and they have to wear a lot of hats. And I actually dealt with Mr. Martinez because he was my youngest son's counselor over at Grossmont Middle College. And I found him to be very affable and good people skills. So he would be my choice. Not that the others aren't qualified, but he would be my choice.
Anybody else like to talk about your thoughts on the interviews? Gary, if you'd like to make a motion, then feel free.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Mr. Martinez to the Personnel Commission.
Second?
I'll second.
All right, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Well, do you want to administer the oath of office? Mr. Martinez, if you can come up. And to the other two candidates that weren't chosen tonight, I'm not just saying this. You guys are both super qualified for this job. Things like this come up all the time in El Cajon. Please come and apply for Planning Commission, apply for other positions. Everyone, or most everyone here, was on one of these kind of commissions, and several of us didn't make it the first time or two, so it's not unusual. Please come back. We need your service. Thank you.
I, Jason Martinez, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations, sir. All right. The second administrative report, item 13, is for Phase 2 of the business program. And I'd like to ask Vince DiMaggio, our Assistant City Manager, to tell us all about this.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We'll bring up the PowerPoint presentation here momentarily. Okay. So 2 weeks ago, we visited and the council approved Phase 1 of the business grant program, which was the employee incentive for businesses who needed to hire employees. There was a grant approved by the City Council for $5,000 per employee, up to a maximum of $15,000. We heard a lot of discussion the last 2 weeks from the council. 2 weeks ago, we heard a lot of discussion from the council. We took those notes and crafted the Phase 2 of the program. And so we'll talk about Phase 2 of the program, which is to provide a reimbursement grant of up to $15,000 for the purchase of furnitures, fixtures, or equipment, or FF&E, and or a facade or site improvement grant. So that was taking all of the comments that we heard and kind of molding it into a program that provides some choices. And the choices would be, at least as we're proposing, that you can purchase any capital items, which we're defining as FF&E as the common terminology, anything for the interior of the building that helps the business function, or let's say you want a new sign. Let's say you want to do something on the facade, or let's say you want to add landscaped areas. So you can kind of look at a number of different options up to $15,000. We believe that we can blend this, for instance. You can have, let's say, $5,000 in FF&E and $10,000 in facade or site improvement. So this is the proposal before you for Phase 2. I will tell you that we've had many applications come in the last 2 weeks for Phase 1, and we have a lot of applications lining up for Phase 2 as it's been preliminarily described. So it would work this way. What we're proposing is the business would submit a list of what it wants to do and what it wants to buy. If it wants to do site improvements, a facade grant, purchase FF&E, it would submit that list to us. We would review for compliance, which would probably be very cursory, and then indicate to the business that they've been approved. The business then purchases the materials and or makes the improvements that they suggested, and upon verification of these things, the city will then reimburse the business up to $15,000 using American Rescue Plan funds. So that's really, after this I'm going to go into some clarification issues on Phase 1. So this is essentially the heart of the Phase 2 program, and with that, I'll answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate that. Questions from the council?
Hi.
Hi.
So let me ask you this. Say they want to do a facade or sign improvement. Do they need to get, and I see that it's to be approved, if they get, who's going to be approving before the work is done?
Well, they would submit to us a list, and if it was a sign, for instance, for your example, they would show us what the sign is. We would have to also indicate whether they would need a permit from the building department for the erection of the sign. So we would review it, we would approve it, and then they would go do the steps that they need to do to facilitate that.
Okay, so let me kind of get my thought process here. So they apply, they say, we want to do an improvement on our facade. And they show us the list of things that they want to do. They give us drawings or whatever it takes. We approve it. They go ahead and we pay for it. after the work is done?
Correct.
Okay, and will we be reevaluating what they did to make sure that they did what we want, what they said they would do? I guess what I'm concerned about, I'm just being a negative person here, is that they say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to paint it this color, or we're going to do this. Come to find out, when the work is done, it's not up to what we wanted. You know, we talked about continuity in business, you know, throughout the city. And so it really is maybe really garish. It's not what they said. What's our recourse on that?
Well, they of course don't get the grant until the work is done. So it is.
And we have to approve it.
Yes, it was
Okay.
certainly possible for the staff to look at a facade improvement to make sure, you know, if there's a building permit for a sign, that's going to have an inspection. We don't have a lot of design control in many parts of the city as far as exterior colors and things like that. We've got some landscaping standards, but I get your point, and the point is, we will be reviewing these things, or have the ability to review these things before we actually issue the money to them after it's done.
Okay, I'm just sort of a what-if type person. So what if they submit this, but it turns out to not be the same as what they submitted?
Understood.
That's all I had on that. Thank you.
Okay.
Mobile businesses are excluded. For instance, a mobile screen repair, a mobile car detail, a mobile pool service.
That's correct.
That's your recommendation? Okay.
Yes.
And I think, Michelle, you're not being negative. You're protecting the taxpayers against fraud. I tend to look at it that way. And we want that to be, we're here to protect the taxpayers' money. So I think whether it's in the employee section or in this section, we just have the guidance, I do, that try to avoid fraud. Right. Here's an example. I know a franchise company that acquired another franchise brand with 250 locations, and as a welcoming gift, they gave every location a 40-inch TV to use as an in-store digital signage advertising piece, along with the Wi-Fi, the Amazon Fire Stick that went with it. Many people took those home. Mm-hmm. So whatever you just, we're trying to prevent fraud, and we leave that to you.
And I appreciate that, Mr. Goebel, and I will tell you that with the discussions that we've had over the last month between staff and council, I think we've gotten there in large part, and I think this is a much better, I guess I hate to say better, but remember the first grant round, the first round of the business grants was just a direct grant. It was just money. This time the council has approved, or has approved phase one, may go on to approve phase two, but you're requiring them to do something. And that's going to help the prevention of any type of fraud, because we can verify these things. We have to verify the employment part of it. We're going to have to verify that the materials that have been purchased are the materials that they said they wanted to purchase. What they wanted to do to the site is the things that they said that they wanted to do to the site. So it's kind of, they have to earn it, in a way, as opposed to just be given a check. Now, at the time, I think that was probably the right thing to do in the first round. We were at a crisis point, and I think it was right to just give money if people needed to pay their rent. At this time, we're kind of moving into a recovery stage where, people want to recover, people want to buy things that they could use for their business or make their business more attractive, and that's part of the recovery process, and it's conditioned. So things are conditioned, and I think we have a good grasp on preventing that fraud that you're concerned about.
Okay, thank you.
Phil, and then Gary.
Thank you for all your work on this, Vince. We appreciate it. I want to go back to the mobile businesses that Councilman Goebel said. Maybe can you walk me through some of the reasons why? I'll just state my perspective with regard to mobile businesses, in that, that if it's a landscaping company or a cleaning and restoration company, they probably have an office, but it's not visited by the public. It might be in a commercial office that's not visited, not seen. And so those trucks are kind of like their office. If a business is looking to get their truck wrapped, so that presentation looks more nice and more presentable. Or new uniforms for those people who are entering into people's homes or on people's properties. So that's, from my perspective, I don't want to leave any businesses out in case, those are boutique items. Those aren't, nuts and bolts. So I don't know what the conversation or the thought process looked like with regard to mobile businesses, but maybe keep that into consideration with regard to mobile businesses, that their trucks are their storefront, so to speak. And when they're lined up in a parking lot in the city of El Cajon, and they're all busted up, it looks bad. But when it's a nice wrap, or maybe it's deferred maintenance on a truck. So something to think about for my colleagues to consider with regard to mobile businesses that are in the city. It's going to help their business continue to run more smoothly, look more attractive, similar to the facade on the front. And I know one of the intentions of this was to, kill two birds with one stone with regard to helping out businesses, but also lifting the profile of the city, the way it looks. Something to think about. Another question is what potential turnaround time for reimbursement once it's approved. What does that look like for businesses? Any ideas?
My idea is, I think once the internal administrative accounting things are set up, which you have that on your agenda coming up in the next item, I would like to think that we could turn around a check within a matter of 2 weeks.
Okay, great. And then the other question would be, are we verifying the cost of the materials? So, someone's not buying a, $12,000 office chair, from a buddy, and this is the quote that I got, and then they just take it out. And I don't know if we're doing that just to protect the taxpayers, Mr.
Yes, we are.
Gary.
A number of restaurant owners have spoken to me about the success of the outdoor dining, and several of them have said that their customers actually prefer it to dining indoors, and that they would like to apply for a grant for hardscaping where they put up a tent over that. And however, we haven't, I know we have approved these things up until December 31st. They may want a little bit longer time in order to amortize the cost. But would hardscaping be something that they could apply for?
If it's a site improvement, yes, I think we would look closely at that. I mean, that's an improvement to move, dining or create an outdoor dining space. That's clearly a site improvement. So yes, that would be a qualification. That would be qualifying.
But after the December 31st date, it may not qualify.
That's correct, and we're moving into an area where the council may want to consider some land use alterations. Right now there's some land use restrictions in certain parts of the city having to do with outdoor dining, and that may be something that you direct staff to return to you and talk about the conditions under which that becomes permanent.
Yeah, I think time is of the essence on that, because what I wouldn't want to have happen is that it's not approved, the money, and that money goes elsewhere, and then we approve something in 2 months, and maybe we decide it's going to be good for 4 years or 3, which amortizes out a lot better.
Right.
So,
Mr. Kendrick, you do have this temporary hold on some of our planning or zoning regulations, but as part of your implementation plan, you did ask us to come back with some more permanent policy changes. The one caveat I would give, especially to a business applying to make some, let's say, eliminate parking in front of their business, if the council doesn't agree to that, or if there's some concerns that come up after the fact that maybe you don't want to do what you're saying you're wanting to do right now, they would be on the hook to replace that, and that would be on their own dime. So we would encourage them to probably not put in permanent fixtures for a land use policy that could be temporary.
okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Couple quick questions. we had talked about nonprofits and including them. Where we stand on that?
Your direction was to include them, they're included.
Thanks. And then just the thoughts on why not including mobile businesses?
Well, the thoughts are, you're talking about $15,000. You're talking about the possibility of, yes, logos on the side of vehicles, I think could be a facade, a mobile facade, obviously, but they may just buy new trucks. You know, they may buy new used trucks and not invest in actual advertisement, you know, which would be on the side of their vehicles. The other thing is, as Mr. Ortiz already mentioned, I think our focus in making these recommendations to you was to focus on the commercial space, the various commercial spaces around town that are fixed destinations for people to patronize. So we kind of thought mobile business is kind of a home occupation. There's really no customers that should be coming to a home occupation, for instance, but they deploy from their home, they go out into the community. So it didn't seem like a fit that would be an efficient use of the grant.
So just to clarify, so if I had a plumbing company that had an office in El Cajon and I was sending out trucks, would that be a mobile business?
I think if you had a permanent space, if you had a commercial space that your trucks were at, then your commercial space would qualify obviously for the FF&E and the facade site improvement grant. We haven't yet looked at the vehicles that you know the business uses. But if you want us to include that, that's certainly a capital item. You know, so it would be something that I think should or would qualify for.
Just exploring it. I'm wondering if it might make sense to offer a different kind of package for mobile business of a few $1,000s as opposed to 30, or 15 and 15.
Well, I mean, I think the more we talk about it, and the more we talk about the trucks that are used in businesses that have a commercial home base, if you will, I would say in that case that the vehicles would qualify, or detailing the vehicles, or painting the vehicles, or even new vehicles would certainly qualify for the site improvement or FF&E material grant.
And again, we're talking about businesses that already have
correct
an alcohol business license, so it's not like they're going to just say, "Oh yeah, we're El Cajon."
Correct.
I think what we're going to get into, and we're going to need some clarification and some real specific direction from council, is as Ms. Mitchell talked about, the what ifs, right? There's all of these what ifs. So I'll give an example. My wife runs a home-based business. She doesn't need a vehicle to run her business, but under this program, if we were to open it up, my fear would be, she doesn't live in El Cajon, so you don't have to worry about her applying for this, but applying for it, and all of a sudden I'm driving a new car to work. So because she's claiming it's part of her business operation. I think we're going to be mired in some of those issues, and that's okay. But part of this is to get as much money out as possible to help as many businesses as possible. We see as we're talking out loud right here, I think we're seeing the value of the vehicles. I just think you're probably going to have to give staff some leeway to say no on some stuff.
Well, certainly. I'd like to get thoughts from the rest of the council.
I agree with having the leeway. I think my original thought a couple weeks ago in proposing the FF&E and leasehold improvements was this is beautification of physical property in El Cajon. I do have a concern with the mobile business that those places are going beyond the city limits. The El Cajon taxpayers are paying for the benefits of people who roll into other cities, in a sense, and they're not getting value here in El Cajon. But there probably are flexibility for you to accommodate.
That's why I was exploring the concept of maybe having a different fee structure for mobile businesses. You know, so where it makes sense for the Italian restaurant to get $30,000, it might make more sense for the mobile business to get $2,000 or $3,000, so they can do some improvements, but they don't have the same kind of obligations that somebody with a brick and mortar business has.
I agree with you that the leasehold improvements, they have a big financial commitment. They signed a lease on a spot that is probably $200,000 over 5 years or something like that. They've got a big investment in a piece of property. A mobile business doesn't have the same kind of investment, but we want them to succeed also. So I guess I'm open to saying up to $5,000 per se for
Let me just
a mobile
first ask
business.
Vince, is that something you can work with?
I mean, we'll work with any direction that the council wants to give us. No, I mean, I totally understand that this council wants to accommodate as many businesses as possible. We want to accommodate as many businesses as possible, and I certainly think that we could administer something like what you just said. And I think rather than having us continue to come back and refine, I think that the resolution allows the city manager to take this direction and craft it administratively into something that we can get going, because we want to push out the money as quickly as possible. So if the council wants to direct $5,000 for mobile businesses, then we could certainly create an administrative framework to implement that.
Well, Phil, what are your thoughts?
I think that's great. I would say that we still want to make sure that it's limited to only businesses that have a commercial spot in El Cajon. The home business thing I don't think is a good idea, but give them the option. So if it is a plumbing company and they have a storefront on Main Street, they could choose to do their storefront enhancement, or they could choose to do their fleet that's parked out front that's representative of the facade as well.
What do you feel about the limitation of money to $5,000?
I'm fine with the limitation. I mean, obviously, like I said, I understand the intention with regard to, improving the facade of El Cajon. I think that's the two birds with one stone we're going to maximize. So I'm okay with the limitations and the discretion to city staff as well.
Gary?
Well, I like Steve's $5,000 idea. And one thing that staff may want to look at is the amount of sales tax they generate in El Cajon. I mean, if they're generating $500 a year in sales tax, maybe that's not a well-spent money for us.
I understand that point, and I wanted to go back, if I may, Mr. Kendrick, to Mr. Ortiz's comment. If you have a storefront, then they would qualify for the $15,000 anyway. So what I'm looking for is direction about how you want us to distinguish the $5,000. I mean, if you want to say that, yeah, you have a storefront, but we want to do vehicles. Are vehicles then in a restricted category to where it's just $5,000 on vehicles? Or do they need to have a storefront? I heard you say you wanted them to have a storefront.
Yeah, I think that they need to have some kind of commercial address in the city.
Well, how would you feel about them having an El Cajon business license?
And that as well, absolutely.
All right. Well, a lot of those mobile places are going to have homes as the place where they do their business out of. But they're not doing their business in the home. So if it's a blind company, they're not doing their business in the garage, but they're parking their car in the garage and keeping their supplies in the garage, and they're going out to businesses in, I would assume that much of the business will be in El Cajon. If they have an El Cajon business license, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, my perspective is they should have a El Cajon business license at a commercial address, not a home address. That would be my... Let's keep the standard consistent.
Well, I just want to go back to what Vince was saying. If they have a commercial address, then they're qualifying for the whole grant program.
Right, but maybe some of them might be... I mean, we have on Weld and Pioneer these storefronts that aren't really storefronts where customers don't visit them. And so their office and their they wouldn't. I wouldn't see them, and a lot of them probably are renting, and so I wouldn't see them doing storefront facades. And instead, their enhancement would be to their trucks, which is basically their storefront.
And so if that were the case, then they'd be limited to a maximum of $5,000.
They could do either or. If they wanted to do furniture in their storefront that no one visits, then they could.
So they have $15,000 under your scenario.
Yep.
You can just simply direct us to limit vehicle enhancements to $5,000, because then they still have $10,000 to invest in site improvements, new sign, FF&E. That's the easy fix.
I like that.
I think Vince, you hit on it. Everybody likes that,
I'm going to, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to ask Michelle. She had her hand up.
So, just to clarify, I have two neighbors that have their own businesses. One across the street is a plumber, and the guy in the corner of my cul-de-sac has his own landscaping business. And I'm sure maybe not so much the plumber, but at least the landscaping, probably was impacted because I did see them home quite a bit this past year. They would not be able to qualify because their offices are in their homes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'd like to suggest a little tweak to that to say, if you're a pool cleaner, if you're a plumber, if you're a pest control, you might have multiple vehicles. And so I'd say, I know a vehicle wrap from experience costs at most $2,500. So that's kind of what we would like to see in a vehicle, is in a nicer looking vehicle. Or maybe they want to put a rack on it. I would suggest a $2,500 max per vehicle up to $15,000 and see what you all think about that. If they have six vans they want to rewrap, there'd be their $15,000. If they have 3 vans they want to wrap and the other 4 they want to put racks on top, they can get their $15,000 worth. Trying to widen this thing a little bit.
I certainly don't see a problem with that, Mr. Goebel. And conversely, they could do 2 vehicles for $5,000 and still have $10,000 left. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was kind of to stretch it to say $2,500 per vehicle.
Right. So what I'm saying is, I have 2 vehicles, so I'm going to spend $2,500 per vehicle for
Yes.
$5,000, but I still could spend $10,000 on other things.
And your little space back there on, well, I want new carpeting, I want new desks, and I go one step further for consideration for council. If you buy from somebody in El Cajon, you ought to get a 10% premium in your reimbursement.
I'm sorry, if you what?
If I buy office furniture for part of my thing, and I buy it from an El Cajon-based business who's here in El Cajon, they win. And to incentivize people to buy from El Cajon-based businesses, you get 110% of your $15,000 if you buy whatever you buy from an El Cajon-based business. It's not going to happen a lot, but
I want to ask Graham about that because I can see 2 problems with that. One is it makes it really complicated, and 2 is that now we're going over the 15,000 limit, which other people might complain about.
I can just say this. We're already pushing our staff to the max on this program. If we were to do that, I love the idea because it does reinvest more money in sales tax back into the city of El Cajon. We really may want to consider exploring a third party to help administer this program.
We'd lose the value of the whole thing then. I'm okay with it.
Okay, well, we've hashed it out, democracy at work, but does anybody have any objections? Or I don't think you need a vote on this, do you? Right? You just need direction.
So Mr. DiMaggio talked about franchise, not franchise. I'm sorry. There's a whole other step. Sorry. I was so excited to talk about the next process. Sorry, Mr. DiMaggio.
Since we have Phase 2 ironed out, we need to go back and revisit Phase 1 briefly because we would like some clarification from you on your direction to make sure that grant program is being administered the way you would like us to administer it. So we're seeking clarification in 2 areas. Can businesses combine Phases 1 and 2 as long as they don't exceed the $15,000 limit? Now, what that means is I want to hire 1 employee. I don't need 3. I can get $5,000 for 1 employee, but I still have $15,000, and I have things I want to do, FF&E things I want to do for $10,000. I don't see a problem with that, Mr. Goebel. I think that, to give credit to you, I think that was your idea. So I think the blended approach between 1 and 2 is not overly taxing on staff administering this, and we have had the question come up several times. So a blended approach is something that we would recommend if you're okay with it.
Okay, great.
Okay. The second issue may take some time. Should franchises and chain businesses be included? So what we're doing in terms of defining these terms, a franchise would be defined just for our purposes of discussion as a national brand that allows a small business owner to operate under that brand and may or may not pays a franchise fee to it and may or may not receive some sort of financial support during COVID. The obvious franchise that we're talking about would be something like a McDonald's, a Jack in the Box. Now, those fast food ones were excluded per your direction, so I'm giving you some bad examples, but those are typical franchises where a local business owner owns the business under the umbrella of the franchisor and operates the business using the name and the menus and things like that. So that's a franchise as we look at it. A chain, it can be a couple of different things. There are national chains that are large-scale national chains like Walgreens or Home Depot or Lowe's. Those are not franchises. They're owned by a parent company, nationwide parent company. All of their outlets are owned by the parent company, and they're a chain. We do have a situation, however, and we did in the first round of the business grant where we had a local business owner who owned a dry cleaners, and fortunately for him, he had two different locations, one in the eastern part of the city and one in the western part of the city. And he was a chain, right, because he was owned by the same person, the one person, the local business owner, just happened to have two locations, so he was a local chain. So he did qualify in our estimation and would qualify at both locations because both locations are separate businesses, just happen to be owned by the same person. Large national chains, which, by the way, we didn't get any applications in the first round from, not one, because they're owned by the national headquarters. So we would exclude those if they were to come to us. We doubt they will come to us. We haven't had them yet. We haven't had any phone calls on them yet. The question really comes down to franchises and franchisees owning businesses that operate from a franchisor to a franchisee of a brand. So your direction is sought on that.
Okay. Steve, you're the expert on franchises.
Franchises are fine to me. We use the word independently owned and operated. Yes, you're part of a larger brand, but you own your location. And so all the skin in the game is on you. You just pay a royalty for each additional dollar. That's why franchises should be included, because they don't have the same access to capital that a national company-owned chain does. They didn't qualify for PPE loans because they got money from the Department of Treasury direct. I'm okay with franchises. I'm okay with this two-person chain. It's the national company-owned brands that I think we want to exclude.
Are we getting a lot of questions from franchisee owners?
No.
I can't imagine that there's a lot of franchisee owners that aren't drive-through in the city. I'm trying to think of.
I think there are probably some, and I won't name names, but I think there are probably some pizza establishments that maybe go in and get it and not drive through.
Or maybe ice cream.
Maybe ice cream. Again, I can tell you we had no franchises apply during the first round. We have not had any questions from franchises this round, but we want to understand your direction fully and completely so that we are prepared.
Yeah, I view franchises as buying a business. As the same thing. You're a business owner. You're investing that capital. Like Councilman Goebel said, you're on the hook for it. So I would agree with his opinion.
Yeah, I have a question for Steve. Would a franchise owner during the shutdown receive special funds to help them through the process?
Usually not, because franchisees pay a royalty. So if the franchisee's sales suffer, so do the franchisor's royalties. If your sales are down, their royalties are down. So they typically can't offer they can offer a deferral or a payment plan, but they're not going to waive income.
Well, I think you're both right. There's no reason to exclude them, but let's hear.
Yeah. Well, as the mayor said, Steve's the expert on those, and I'm going to defer to his opinion on this. I think we need to include the local-based chains. If a guy owes 3 or 4 taco shops in El Cajon, I think that's fine. The dry cleaners was a great example. I completely agree with what the staff did on that. And, the big chains I want to exclude, but I think the franchisees, A lot of them are just small businessmen that don't own a franchise. So I'm on board with that.
Michelle, any objections? All right. Vince, I think you have your direction.
We have your direction, and I believe there's a resolution that requires your action.
Okay. Somebody like to make a motion? Let me see if there's any speaker cards first, or Angela will yell at me.
Thank you, sir. No cards.
Okay. All right. Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move we adopt the next resolution in order approving Phase 2 of the second round of business grants.
Second.
All right. Move to second, and please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right. Well, that wasn't
Thank you.
too hard. Vince, we're now at item number 14, which is an American Rescue Plan update. And I think, Vince, you're still up, right?
Actually, it's Mr. Mitchell on this one.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I anticipate we'll probably have this as a reoccurring agenda item, at least for a little while. But we wanted to provide an update on the American Rescue Plan, some of the things that you had talked about in previous meetings, and to start reporting out on progress made so we're very transparent about where the money's going and how it's being spent. So in today's report, I'm going to talk about a scholarship program that was presented 2 council meetings ago by Greg Hendricks during public comment, and the council asked staff to evaluate that. I wanted to talk quickly about the survey that we put out and some of the results that have come back from that, and then again provide a financial summary and then some recommendations at the end. So we looked at the scholarship program as it was outlined during the public comment. I actually had a chance to speak to Mr. Hendricks several times about the program, and we looked at it through several different evaluative lenses. We looked at it from, one, is it permissible under the American Rescue Plan? 2, what would be the procurement pitfalls or procurement steps we'd have to jump through under the way that was presented? And then finally, is there a community benefit? And the staff report actually goes in reverse order. From the American Rescue Plan, it was obvious from the actual legislation itself that clearly this is not acceptable. This is not an approved program. Just yesterday, the U.S. Treasury Department put out 151 guide or final product of the regulations. We're going through that right now. I scanned it really quickly. I still don't see a way for the way the program was actually presented for it to apply for APR funds, ARP funds. But I think there's maybe some other things that the council could consider if it wishes to. From a procurement perspective, this would be very difficult for the council to have a relationship in which several $1 million would be exchanged with one entity itself. We would have to go through a pretty exhaustive procurement process, open it up to the world, and let higher institutions of learning apply to be part of our partnership. So we think it's possible, but it would just be very time-consuming. It would be a difficult process to get through. From a community benefit perspective, we think it has loads of community benefit, especially if it were expanded even beyond that of high school seniors that want to study IT-related fields. If it were opened up to anybody in the community, I can think of assisting those in our homeless community that are looking for educational improvements. It could be a huge benefit to the city. However, back to the fact that under the rescue plan, we're not quite sure it would fall under any guidelines under what we're allowed to receive. I don't know if we can really pursue it more. And in fact, I'd recommend we not pursue that plan more. However, we did think if there's a goal to get our young residents exposed to the workforce and exposed to technology in particular, perhaps the city could fund under a business assistance program a program where we would help finance internships, paid internships, not free labor, but paid internships where high school students and college-age students can get into businesses, and we would focus on high-tech businesses and help fund those intern programs. So the business gets a benefit, and our young residents get a benefit from having some exposure and some paid experience with a company. So that could be something the council could consider. We think that would certainly fall within the parameters of the American Rescue Plan, and we can come back and talk about that at the end of the presentation. Are there any questions about the proposal itself right now? If we can address those, or would you like me to move forward? Okay.
Steve has a question.
The procurement process, what you're saying is it would go out to bid, and you don't really know who would be awarded the contract until you see all the bids.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to, the council would have to determine the scope of service that it really wanted to get, and then we would go out and bid that, look at qualifications and costs as well. So it would open it up pretty widely. One of the things that the council directed us at the 2 meetings ago as well is to reach out to our community through social media and through our phone app, and to talk to our residents about ideas of how the money could be used. One of the complications, or I guess I should say the limitations of such a survey is it takes a whole team of staff to understand just what's eligible or not. And so we can't expect people to read a 20-page document before they can answer. So we were just asking really general questions, and just to get a sense of what our community is looking for in terms of how to spend this money. We received over 300 or almost 300 participants that provided survey responses. Over 900 ideas were generated. And as you can see from the graph up here, this doesn't equal 100 because you could answer multiple boxes. But majority were residents, had a lot of business owners, and a quarter of the people answering have children attending school. So that kind of gives you a blend of who was out there. If you also look at the age distribution of those that took it, very, very broad age distribution. Almost every age group had equal representation as survey participants. So we took all 900 words, put it in an Excel spreadsheet, which you have as part of the agenda packet, and we started doing word searches on topics and terms. Now, again, this doesn't add up to 100% because I'll give you an example. Why are there so many homeless? They're impacting our business community. Please have the police department do something about it. We need a cleaner city. So that one comment would have generated a response for all of these different categories. But it gives you a sense of what our community is interested in. There's a lot of interest in helping our business community. I think there's a strong recognition that our business community suffered over this past year. There was a recognition that infrastructure is important to our community. It's something that, frankly, we just don't have the funds to invest in year after year, and so this is an opportunity to use some funds to invest in our community and make it look better and improve it. Homelessness was a very strong topic. Now, this ranged from please help the homeless, we need more housing, we need more shelters, give more money to ECTLC, to please ship them, get a bus and take them to Yuma, just the whole range of homeless. But this just encompasses all homelessness issues. Parks and Recreation received some attention. Beautifying the city and having a cleaner city received attention, and then public safety received attention. So those are the areas that had perhaps the biggest focus. As I said earlier, a lot of the ideas that were presented just probably aren't eligible. They're outside of our purview. The city has no control over Grossmont and Union High School District's bus routes. I mean, those are things that we just don't have purview, nor could we allocate money toward. But there's a lot of ideas that I think we can use from the public input on steering how the money should be spent for the rest of the money that's yet to be allocated. One of the things that I wanted to bring up is, based on the interim final rule that came out from Treasury, there's some really specific areas that we now know that we can use the money for that were not necessarily included in the last round. One is to support public health expenditures with a specific task for local governments to help bridge the gap or reduce the disparity between different groups that have access to medical assistance or medical care and those that don't. There's a use, the money could be used to assist anybody that's been economically impacted, And it focused on workers, it focused on businesses, it focused on specifically impacted industries such as the hotel sector and the tourism sectors. It talked about replacing lost revenue that cities have lost because of COVID-19. I'm going to pause here just for a second. The final order, or the interim final order, went into some great detail about how a city is to calculate what those lost revenues are. We have already run that calculation based on Treasury's model. So this isn't our model, this is Treasury's model. All $30 million based on Treasury's model could be allocated to this, to lost revenue, based on their model. We don't think that's probably the best use of funds. We think it needs to get out into the community a little bit more, and that's why we've recommended the business program, for example. But just so you know, if the council would like to, you could retain all this funding. And you'd have to use it for something. You just can't stockpile it and put it into coffers. It has to be used for things. But it gives you a lot of leeway as a elected body to utilize these funds. We also know that the money can be used to provide premiums for essential workers, not only municipal workers but outside. I think that becomes very complicated and a difficult proposition. I would recommend we focus on programs that are broader in nature, that have a bigger, broader impact on the community. And it also is very clear that the money should be used for investing in capital projects. And unlike the last time, it did include stormwater. That was the first time we've seen the word stormwater in any regulation. So it does broaden it. And there's other parts of the regulation that talk about how it can be used for other capital improvements, such as maintaining and improving streets. Again, something new that we had not heard of, and it's something that we actually explicitly told the council could not be used in I believe our last meeting. But that is something that changed as of yesterday as well. So let me go back to this. I think there's so much new information at this point. We would actually recommend that the council, except for maybe some small direction tonight or this afternoon, we kind of pause, let staff digest that plan, and actually come back with a pretty comprehensive report of what is eligible and not eligible. I think that would be beneficial to the city council. So with that, what we would recommend is we move forward with what has already been recommended by the council, that we sort of allocate or earmark $10 million of the funding for replacing city revenues, that we continue with the $5 million for the grant program, that we continue to allocate or appropriate $225,000 for business license support program, and that we continue to allocate $700,000 for Recreation Dollar Days program, which has a wide benefit to the entire community. Those programs alone equal about almost $16,000. When we came to you last, we reported that we were anticipating 34-point-something million dollars. That number has been recalculated by Treasury, and it's now the $30.4 million that we'll be expecting to receive, typically in two tranches unless we request for an earlier tranche. So what we should be receiving soon is about the money that already has been appropriated at this point. And as a reminder, we're still working on Food Fest. That was something that the council asked us to focus on last time. Some economic development project proposals for the city council to think about. Again, some capital projects. And then just the ARP includes a lot of other funding sources in addition to the local government funding. That includes affordable housing, specific money for affordable housing, and homeless program. So we're looking for that. However, the ARP for local governments does include assistance for housing development projects, affordable housing development projects, which is, again, something new. And in fact, when I met with Mr. Goldberg yesterday, we didn't know that at that time. So it certainly is opening up some avenues. One of the things that we have yet to do is actually have a mechanism by which we can spend these monies. So if we were to get a business grant, we actually have no legal authority to give any business a grant until we appropriate these funds. So staff would recommend the council consider the resolution as part of the package that would at least receive these funds and begin appropriating these funds based on the feedback that's been given to staff thus far. Staff's willing or would like to hear any thoughts that you may have on the survey results, and then any other additional direction based on this report or any other information that we receive from the public. So at this time, staff's able to answer any questions and receive direction.
Thanks. Let me just see if there's any public comments.
Yes, sir. We have 5 comments. The one in the chamber is Danielle.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me again. My name is Danielle, and I'm with East County BIPOC. I wanted to start off by thanking Steve Goebel for attending the East County Justice Coalition Forum last Tuesday. And I hope that you'll take the information that was shared in that meeting about redistricting and vaccine access with you and share it with the rest of the council and the mayor. I also wanted to, I saw the survey as well when I was looking at the agenda, and I think the city did a very good job addressing the community's desire for small business support. As the survey said, 40% of the community are like, I guess that's a rough number since there's like multiple choice, but 40% was interested in supporting businesses, and if you take 40% of that 30 million that we're working with, that's about 12 million. So I think we're doing a good job addressing those needs. As far as the survey goes, though, there was that 25% that were concerned about our houseless neighbors in some capacity, whether they want to get rid of them or they want to actually help them. So I think we could do our part by allocating a larger portion of the funds to this issue in various capacities. And that would be, if we were to allocate the 25% that the people are concerned about, that'd be like 7.5 million. And I think we could do wonderful things using that sum of money, as well as the 20% that were interested in recreations and parks. That would be $6 million from the American Rescue Plan that would be dumped into restoring parks and other facilities that I think we'd get a lot of use out of. I do not think that we should be allocating $1.5 million to the creation of a narcotics unit. That is very costly, and that doesn't fall under the guidelines from the Treasury Department. I did my research from the same website as the city manager. I saw the Treasury website last night, and I also noticed that although these categories are broad with the guidelines that they've given us, it says that within these overall categories, recipients have broad flexibility to decide how best to use this funding to meet the needs of their communities. So I think that allows for a lot of wiggle room with how we do spend the money, because $30 million is a lot of money to spend, and we have an opportunity to do a lot of good with it right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
The rest of the comments are submitted online. The first one is an anonymous comment. It says, "Hi, I feel that we could use this money to raise and inspire our kids and make El Cajon a brighter place, but instead we preach fear and hate. In an attempt to protect our children, we deprive our schools and city of money in order to feel safe. Instead of funding a proud city for everyone, we choose to fund a police state. A police state does not raise good kids. Fund a fun and thriving El Cajon Valley that will be proud of when all our time is done. I ask you to ponder your kids' future." Next comment from Carr. "No money should be allocated towards police and or any police-related programs. Relief aid should support existing programs like education, libraries, housing, and much more. The police department receives more than enough each year. They do not need further funds to destroy communities of color. I ask you today to consider the community first and not institutions that perpetuate violence and white supremacy." From Kelsey Ellis Alvarez. "The money from the ARP plan should be given to programs like the East County Transitional Living Center so that unhoused residents in our community are able to use their time towards taking care of their families and well-being instead of worrying about where their next meal will be or if they will have a place to live. This is the same reason why the money should be allocated to the Homestart Rental Utilities Assistance Program so that we keep more residents in homes rather than on our streets. Supporting our community members with ARP funding is crucial coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, since so many of our people have had to deal with losing their incomes and trying to survive. Using funds to ensure our community is housed rather than creating a narcotic unit will have a greater impact on the safety of the community. And the last comment from Alana. I am in support of the American Rescue Plan being used for the people. This money is meant to support small businesses, stimulate the economy, and provide immediate economic relief to the suffering as a result of the pandemic. There are thousands of everyday El Cajon residents who are struggling because of COVID-19. Individuals and families have lost their homes or are struggling to hold on to them. So it is important that we provide immediate relief in the form of rental and utility assistance programs. The California eviction moratorium ends on June 30th, and there will be many households in need of assistance. Now is the time to act so that we can prevent another crisis in the summer, and that concludes the comments.
Thanks, Angela. All right, Council.
I have a question. Quick question. So, guidance from the federal government seems like it's slowly rolling out. Is there any value in maybe waiting? Because there could be more clarification. Just like we said, Councilman Goebel was having a conversation with our city manager, and then we were given direction. This was used, not used. I don't want to just, so to speak, pull the trigger and then get further guidance and say, oh, we could have used it for that. That's too bad. And it seems like what we have designated right now with regard to businesses, because they're the ones that suffer the most, seems like a good idea. But with regard to the other 15 or so and change, I don't know what your thought was on.
I think so. I mean, we've been getting little trickles of information out over the last couple weeks. Yesterday was a massive fire hose shot at us. So I think there's a lot to digest. I mean, it is called the interim final rule. So I think it's close to it. I can imagine there may be some tweaks here and there. I know we've reached out to our own legislators, Congressman Issa and Congresswoman Jacob, to talk about allowing green projects to be part of this money, which it currently is not, which makes total sense. So I can see some of those lobbying efforts done by us and by other agencies, modifying some of these parameters. So I think there is probably some value in waiting. The other thing is we are one of the first in the county to be having this discussion at this level. I mean, I think we're one of the first to actually appropriate money. The value is we're leaders. The disadvantage is we're not learning from some of the great minds of other cities too. So there is some value in letting us chew on the new rules and regulations, allowing us to implement what's already been allocated, and frankly, you've given us a lot of still ongoing homework that we're working on. There's probably some value in exploring that and then coming back with, again, a very broad discussion on what's allowed, probably some objectives of how the council would like to use the funds overall, not just specific projects, but maybe just overall objectives would make sense, and then that will help create a framework by you and the public to weigh in on opportunities to best utilize these funds.
That's great. Yeah, I think there's, like you said, there's wisdom in waiting until it's the final guidance from the federal government. So we don't have regret on how we.
Michelle.
Can you direct me where it says that we were going to allocate 1.5 for a narcotics task force? Because that was brought up a few times by several people, and I didn't see that.
I think on 2 council meetings ago, so not last meeting, but the meeting before, we were just spitballing ideas just to get the idea going. One of the directions out of the implementation plan was to create a narcotics unit. So we put that in there. We don't think, based on the public speaker's comment as well, that it's probably not an eligible expenditure at this time for that specific of a task.
Okay. So now I want to go back to, I just had some thoughts on the part where you talk about the many ideas shared are ones that are not eligible. However, they're kind of noteworthy and, maybe something that we can look at in the future. So the first one was develop small business incubator program. I thought that was wonderful, and I thought that maybe just we could work something between the Chamber of Commerce and Junior Achievement and SCORE. My husband always tells the story of how he went to, I think it was Washington, D.C. or Indianapolis for Junior Achievement, and he just had such a wonderful experience with that. So I think that's something that we should maybe look into. The next one was establish a vaccine site. I thought we already had one.
We don't have, there's a county-operated one right now.
Right.
There are several organizations that are starting to open them up. In fact, I just talked to the president of the Chamber of Commerce. They're actually starting one next Monday in their parking lot, so they'll be offering it there. We've been in some dialogue about, is there some value in us helping to pay for our own city staff to go out and do vaccines at places of business and do a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce. We currently have done that at mobile home parks throughout the city, so we're using our city staff to do that. One thought, and again, this is maybe too much weeds, but I think there's a lot of vaccine availability right now. The area that we may want to consider is when the boosters come out in the fall, that maybe we allocate some funds to help ensure that our residents get the booster, if that's something the council sees as a need.
Okay, because I know that some of the pharmacies, Palm Pharmacy on Mollison and Madison, they're doing vaccines now. So I was just kind of checking that out. The other one was develop homeless program to create a day center with employment opportunities. I think that's an awesome idea. They need a place to go. Some of these people need training or they need just some sort of direction. Maybe it's been 20 years since they did a resume. Some sort of help with that. So I would like to see it, though, be a non-religious provider doing a day center. We already have Salvation Army, we have ECTLC, and I know that some of the hesitation to get help by homeless are they don't want to be involved in a religious organization. So I'd kind of like to explore that, but do it from a secular point. The next one would be assist in mall redevelopment. My first question was, isn't that going to be government overreach? Who are we to tell this large owner of a piece of property everything that they need to do? Maybe assisting in it and giving some ideas and the direction that we would like to see them all go, but not necessarily dictating to them. And then I would like to know what would that entail if we were to go forward with that. And then the final one was to provide down payment assistance to purchase and redevelopment property or vacant lots. Do you have some properties in mind besides the one on, Madison and Magnolia?
Councilmember Mitchell, we included these because we thought they were ideas that, one, could be eligible under the program as we knew it last week.
Right.
And also they aligned with some of the implementation goals that the council had talked about. So those are the only reason they're included. We're not advocating for these. These are just some thoughts that if council liked them, we could take them back and explore them more.
No, I understand. I just thought if you had something in mind.
I don't, sorry.
Okay.
I'd like to give you more time to come up with things. I don't think there's necessarily a rush. I agree with Mr. Ortiz. We don't need to get it right now. I think I would like to think the best minds in the cities are up here, but I'm certainly open to hearing somebody else's good ideas too. I'd like to hear from an economic development consultant on a big picture. What do they think are the great opportunities for El Cajon economically? So that would cover a lot of the ideas that you're thinking about, to have a consultant look at that. One of the things that I learned out of this forum last week was not only availability to vaccine, but I'm going to call it access. And what I mean is something as easy as rider reimbursement. If somebody cannot afford or doesn't have the means to get out of this house to that site, the only thing that I see urgent today is the public health angle. That we really need to get people vaccinated who want to get vaccinated, but they can't get from point A, their home, to point B. I think ridership reimbursement or some type of ridership program would bridge that gap. I think there are other things that we can do. I like that it was the streets part. Another thing I learned from the forum last week was something as easy as sidewalks in a neighborhood, especially in some of our economically challenged neighborhoods. They provide safety, but they also increase the value of the home of that neighborhood, which lifts the value of the entire city. I don't know how expensive sidewalks are, but that certainly is a win-win-win-win kind of a thing. The only thing I see urgent right now is the public health angle and getting people from here to there somehow.
Well, I really like Steve's idea about the rider reimbursement. My son's a biochemist, and he's had me at house arrest pretty much for the last year and a half, and I'm a big believer in vaccines, and especially the booster vaccine. So I think there'll be huge demand for it when it comes out. So it'd be great if we made it as easy as possible for people to get it.
Hey, Bess? I had a little different thoughts about the vaccine, but I like where it's going. Having worked in mental health most of my life, I know that there are a lot of people that just don't have the wherewithal to navigate the system. Even if you gave them rider reimbursement, they wouldn't know how to get. It'd just be too complicated to get on the bus or to get a ride over there. And that's why I was wondering if we could look into the possibility of perhaps a mobile situation where we reach out into the community to find people that are unable to get out, get the vaccines because they can't navigate the websites or they can't navigate the transportation. I thought that maybe working with Meals on Wheels would be a great first step because you could have them check on any of their residents that were looking to get a vaccine but were unable to get out of the house. Or, a lot of people are afraid to get out of the house. People have psychiatric disorders that make them afraid to go out of the house. And unfortunately, a lot of people become shut-ins for those reasons. So I agree with what all of you said, but I was wondering if we could look at that possibility as well. There's no reason not to do both. Absolutely. Just don't want to forget the folks that can't do that.
I think city staff was also engaging leaders from communities of influence to help reduce the vaccine hesitancy among this group. We have identified a leader in that group, and we will go to that facility site and where they will have a cultural event included with it or something and provide. You have some information on that?
We have been meeting with a lot of our immigrant leadership. In fact, we're hosting a newcomer support and development vaccine site this Friday at the police station. So we'll actually be having folks getting vaccines at a city facility. So we have been engaged with that. We're engaging with the immigrant community on the business grant program as well. So I think we start out slow, but I think we're starting to pick up some speed in that area.
For those that may hesitate wanting to come to the police site, is there another site that those people might, a club, a church, a center?
I think the Chamber of Commerce parking lot is probably one of those nice central locations. It's pretty neutral.
I guess I'll just say a Chaldean church for the Chaldean community.
Yeah.
Is that something that would be helpful?
That.
Because they would feel comfortable going to a church they normally go to and have a vaccination program there. I just laying it all out there.
I think a lot of the problems that you see with vaccines is that there's a lot of mistrust for various reasons. and people that might not trust going to City Hall or to the police station might trust going to the park or might trust going to the Syriac Church or St. Michael's. You know. So I think what the council direction, if I can speak for us, is just we'd like to kind of think about innovative ways to reach out to the community, the people that have been left behind and the people that aren't being reached.
We can do that. In fact, it would be helpful for staff some great ideas were brought up. We'll explore all of those. But if council gave us an appropriation of funds for that, that would allow us to get moving rather than bring back a plan in 2 weeks from now and then implement. I can't imagine more than $100,000 initially just to get the ball rolling. But we would use that for any cost. For the most part, we're using our own staff, which we're paying them already, so there's no cost there. But if there are some ancillary costs, if we can figure out a way to get some transportation, there's some costs associated with that. It's all within my purview, procurement purview. So if council gives me that feedback, we can start rolling.
Well, I know you're always wanting to save money, so I wouldn't have any problem with authorizing a first round of $100,000. Would anybody object to that?
No, I'm all for that. We got to, especially getting vaccines in people's arms. That's time is of the essence.
All in agreement, Phil?
Yeah, quick comment. I was speaking with a resident, Mohammed Tuma. I know he's helped the city before, and he was looking to get city staff on his radio show that's in Arabic that's it's hundreds of thousands of listeners. Maybe loop that into the plan. And I know another resident, Dr. Nuri Barka, has a radio show as well. I think if we can get some staff on there because the language barrier is obviously a big one as well, not only just access and accessibility, but then language as well. So if we can get city staff to get it translated, I think that might be helpful.
Yes, we're working with Mr. Tuama right now. Our own Ryan Villegas is going to be a guest on his program. And Dr. Barca sent me a picture of his studio to entice me there. So we're working on that right now.
I've been there. It's good. It's nice. Okay, do you need more direction on that?
I think that's very useful direction. I like the idea of taking a bit of a pause on some of the big stuff, but we do have a public health crisis that we need to address, and so we'll focus our attention on that and then on the existing programs that council's authorized. And then with that, the only recommendation at this point is that the council adopt the resolution.
Yeah, I'll leave that to council to make a motion.
I'll move that we adopt the next resolution appropriating $17 million plus the $100,000 for vaccine assistance.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay. Super. The last administrative report, item 15, is COVID-19 update, and I'll ask staff to tell us about this.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, I'll be very brief. As you know, this is one of our ongoing agenda items. I just wanted to talk about active case data that's not only region-wide but also in the city, and then just share some data about hospitalization and ICU figures. As you can see, this is our active cases starting from the very beginning of data being reported back in March 2020. We're actually around what I call the pre-4th of July spike that we had in early summer. So that's about our active cases region-wide. Citywide, we're a little bit higher than that. We're still below that spike that we had in July, but we're about where we were almost a year ago at this point in time. From a hospitalization perspective, we have loads of capacity in our hospitals. As you can see, that our COVID patients make up. There's 150 current COVID patients right now in hospitals. They make up 3% of all hospital patients, which is a big shift from where we were several months ago. And we have a capacity for 1,313 additional COVID patients if we had another spike. In looking at the ICUs, COVID patients make up a little less than 10% of the ICU patients right now, with a ICU bed capacity of 444. So we're well below what our capacity is. So from a capacity perspective, we have a lot of wiggle room. So staff's here to answer any questions or provide additional information. And if there are none, I have one more comment to turn some time over to somebody.
Okay, before we go to questions, let me see if there's any speaker cards on this.
No comments were received.
All right, council questions?
Yes. What steps has the city taken to anticipate reopening?
Reopening City Hall or reopening?
Well, I guess reopening business-wise, city-wise. I mean, we kind of control or we make mandates. This is what we're going to follow. This is what we're going to do. What kind of steps are we taking to reopen? And then what do you envision reopening being like? And this is more kind of what the county's going to mandate.
So as you know, we work in partnership with the county.
Right.
We can control our own organization pretty effectively. So the Magnolia is currently closed, and we're not going to recommend opening that until the county says you should open. In fact, Live Nation won't do that. They're they're a publicly traded company, so they're not going to do that. We have never, during the majority of COVID, been in an enforcement perspective.
Right.
But if there was egregious violations, we stepped in and we made phone calls. I see us continuing to play that role. If there was somebody that was egregiously not following health orders, I think we'd be obligated to do something there. I think our current business assistance program, the allowance to use public right-of-way for outdoor dining and parking lots, I think has been useful to help businesses not only stay open but reopen. But I don't think there's much I guess city staff, I don't see us playing a big role in like helping a gym open up, for example, unless they take advantage of the grant program. But I think we're poised for that, and we're encouraging businesses to open up.
Okay. I was on the call, too, on Thursday, so, I kind of got the same idea, but I just wanted to find out, are we sort of aligned with what the county is saying? And, do we anticipate opening up soon? I mean, June 15th comes around. Are things going to open up? And, what is your feeling on that, maybe?
I think most of our businesses are opened up to the capacity they're allowed to be opened up right now, which is pretty, almost full on.
Right.
The county has not used enforcement for months now. They have not used their code enforcement arm in enforcing health codes, which aligns with where we've been at. So we're not gonna unalign ourselves with the county health order because we're bound by law to follow that. But we're allowing them to stay in their lane, and we're staying in our lane.
Okay, thank you.
Has there been any outreach by anybody to the homeless population to get them the vaccine?
We reach out. In fact, we reached out today. We reach out at least twice a week, if not 3 times a week. It's one of the things that we offer. We offer shelter. We offer food. We offer medical assistance.
Okay. More questions? All right, thanks, Graham. Thanks for that update.
So, Mr. Mayor, before we conclude, Mr. Goebel and I had a chance to talk a little bit about some data, and he's actually put together some information that I think the council would find useful when it comes to vaccines and some data related to that. So, Mr. Goebel, I have the clicker if you want to just tell me when to advance.
Sounds good. Great, thank you. I prepared some information for another use for a different agency or a different organization, I should say. So I thought this might be interesting for the council. We don't really get to talk to each other and what we think because we can't talk to more than one other person because we talk of 2 more people now. We have a Brown Act, and so it's really rare that we get to talk amongst each other, especially if it's not on the agenda. Okay, next slide.
Not a very good slide advancer.
So this compares COVID-19 cases. This information is from the CDC, and the sources are on the bottom. This compares COVID-19 versus the seasonal flu, the most recent full complete year. The flu year runs from July 1st through June 30th of the following year, so it's mid-year to mid-year. The 2019-20 year has been concluded, and the COVID-19 year will finish on June 30th. You can see the total number of cases. Interestingly, we don't quite have the same number of seasonal flu cases, which kind of surprises me because I thought it was more contagious. But we probably will be, by the time of the end of June 30th, we'll be pretty close to that 38 million. Hospitalizations, however, you can see COVID is, at this point, as of today, 5 times more likely to be hospitalized than the seasonal flu. Also, the number of deaths is 30 times more likely to die from COVID than you are from the seasonal flu in 2019-20. So it's not more contagious necessarily, but it is more morbid and more mortal. Those are clinical terms. Next slide, please. So the percent of people who are fully vaccinated, you can see that the normal seasonal flu vaccine year is 52%. That's from people 6 months or older. And you can see the COVID status for the U.S., the state of California, and for San Diego County as well. We're actually doing pretty well here in San Diego County, better than the state of California and the U.S. as a whole. So those are actually very good numbers. And those are for people 18 and older. The county uses 16 and older for those numbers. Okay, next slide, please. This is something that's just remarkable, and this is called breakthrough cases. A breakthrough case means you were fully vaccinated, 14 days went by, and you got COVID. That's what a breakthrough case is. For the seasonal flu vaccine, they have a process where they measure this among a sample group from 5 different states and about 8,000 people, more statistically involved. But 4,500 people out of 8,000 in the seasonal flu had a breakthrough, tested positive for the flu after getting, 1140 cases out of 4,528. About 25% had breakthrough cases. They got the flu vaccine, but they ended up getting the flu. About 25%. On the other hand, as of April 26th on the CDC site, 95 million people in the U.S. have been fully vaccinated. There were only 9,245 cases in the nation of breakthrough COVID. That is less than 1/100th of 1%. It's 1 in 10,000. So the COVID vaccines are incredibly effective at preventing breakthrough cases. What that means is there was a concern that, well, once you get vaccinated, you could asymptomatically pass it on to somebody else. This data from the CDC says doesn't appear to be true at this point. Next slide, please. Some of the side effects you've heard, well, I don't want to get the vaccine because, and I don't invalidate anybody's concern about it, but I do like to know not only the possibility, but the probability. So, for instance, anaphylaxis occurs within 30 minutes, and nationally we're seeing 2 to 5 cases per million. It's not as big as maybe what we are led to believe sometime. You may have heard about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine pause. That was due to some people with blood clots with low platelets. That's called thrombocytopenia syndrome, which is low platelets. And that resulted in blood clots, mostly in adult women younger than 50. But again, the case rate was 3 cases per million, even less than anaphylaxis. There have been reports that got the vaccine and died. The CDC has confirmed 4,178 deaths out of 245 million doses. They've reviewed the death certificates, autopsy, and they can't find a causal link between getting vaccinated and dying. Guillain-Barré syndrome, there were no cases following Pfizer, Moderna, and 1 case following J&J. That's why it's listed there. That has to do with the immune system attacking the nerves. Bell's palsy, I've heard about this in the dental community, that it's a risk. 4 people in the Pfizer test, 3 in Moderna, 2 in J&J, and even 3 in the placebo groups. Doesn't exceed the rate in the general population. So the side effects are there, but they look to be very, very, very low. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the breakthrough cases. What about hospitalization? Well, of the 9,200 breakthrough cases I referred to in the prior slide, only 594 ended up in hospitalization and 112 resulted in death out of 95 million people vaccinated. It's very, very, very low at this point, if you are vaccinated, that you will be hospitalized or die from a breakthrough case. Next slide, please. Some caveats. It's always good to have full disclosure. This could have a lag in reporting. The CDC is not yesterday's information. And asymptomatic cases may actually understate the actual numbers. We also have to remember this is summertime, coming up on summertime, and last year that was the low point in cases. We absolutely should expect cases to increase during the normal flu season in the winter when colder weather and darker days push people indoors more. And it's unknown when a new seasonal booster shot will be needed. The Pfizer CEO says 6 to 12 months. So it will probably become like an annual flu shot that we need a booster against prior known variants. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at some data observations. COVID-19 is 30 times more deadly than the seasonal flu. However, the COVID vaccines are substantially more effective than the seasonal flu vaccine in preventing hospitalization and death. This also doesn't consider the additional known benefit for effective antiviral treatments, such as the Regeneron cocktail and other antivirals, in case you are hospitalized. We didn't have those a year ago. We have those today to help survivability. And the data suggests those who have been vaccinated have a very strong likelihood of not contracting COVID, or at least if you do, you have a lessened severity, just like the flu shot. Next slide, please. The data also suggests current COVID vaccines offer protection against most known variants. Sometimes you hear, well, we can't stop because there may be variants out there that whatever. The data today says we know the B117 variant from the UK, we know the South African variant, they're all out there. And we're not seeing them hit cases and increasing. Now, I still want to acknowledge there's still a sizable percentage of people who choose not to get vaccinated for a variety of reasons, which we must respect as personal choice. And we know some of those beliefs include, I don't trust the government. The adverse side effects that I may encounter outweigh the benefits. I'll take my chances. I don't think I'm in a high-risk group for hospitalization or death. Could be age. I don't have any serious comorbidities, underlying conditions. Or I think the antiviral treatments that are available will really help me in case I get it. Next slide, please. So, in conclusion, given the percentage of those vaccinated to date, it's doing really well, but we've still got more opportunity. Given the effectiveness of the vaccines in preventing hospitalization and death through the breakthroughs, given the availability of the effective treatments for those antivirals, given vaccine hesitancy, I think we'll soon change to vaccine resolve, meaning, you know what, I've made up my mind, I'm not going to get one, I don't need more information. Given the current situation of whether to become vaccinated, we know it's not straining the healthcare system today, perhaps due to seasonal conditions, we're in June. Then, once practically everyone has been offered the choice to be vaccinated, should all restrictions be lifted? That's kind of the million-dollar question. Another question, put otherwise, what's the likelihood of overwhelming the healthcare system if all restrictions are removed and rules become advisory instead of mandatory? Once everybody's had a chance to get the vaccine, do we roll the dice? And that's where I leave the discussion. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Steve. That was really great. Anyone ask any questions about that? I think you covered it. You know, I want to ask one question. What's the status of hydroxychloroquine right now?
I think it's approved for emergency use authorization.
So it's no longer being because it would be off-label. Hydroxychloroquine is actually for malaria, so it's approved for off-label use.
But everything that I've read, it is taking a back seat to more effective antivirals such as the Regeneron cocktail or remdesivir.
There's a lot more therapeutics now than there were a year ago, so your chances, even if you have comorbidities, your chances of surviving are greater than it was a year ago. Thank you, Steve. That's wonderful. Graham, anything else in your section?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on. Oh, by the way, if you have access to Steve's report, I'd love to get that emailed to me.
I do. It's public record.
Great. Steve's not going to sue me, or all right. Item 15 is my activities report as reported. And we're activities reports now for the council members. Council member Mr. Goebel.
As reported.
Mayor Pro Tem Gary Kendrick.
As reported.
Council member Michelle Mitchell.
As reported.
And Council member Phil Ortiz.
Mine is as reported.
Thank you all. There are no general information items on today's agenda. There are no first or second readings on today's agenda. My understanding is we are not going to close session.
No, Mayor, we are going to closed session, but only on 2 items.
Oh, okay. All right. So we are now at closed session. The city attorney will recite the titles and lead us in the closed session, and I'll make a motion to adjourn the closed session.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. The City Council will be meeting in closed session on 2 items. The third one, item 23, has been removed. The first is item 21, conference with legal counsel on existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9. The name of the case is Neighbors Against Noise and Traffic versus City of El Cajon. The second, item 22, is conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to paragraph 2 of subdivision D of Government Code section 54956.9, one potential case. The description is that Mercury Insurance Company, as subrogee of Colleen Murphy, has submitted a claim for damages alleging losses suffered by following a rear-end collision involving a city vehicle, and the claimant's insured.
Thanks, Councilor. So I'll make a motion to adjourn the closed session. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a brief recess to go into closed session. We'll be back soon and report from there. Gentlemen, we are back from closed session. I'll ask our attorney to report.
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council met in closed session on 2 items. Item 21, which was a conference with legal counsel on existing litigation, that is the Neighbors Against Noise and Traffic versus City of El Cajon, and gave direction to its city legal counsel. And item 22, met in closed session for a conference with legal counsel on anticipated litigation, and that is as described in the agenda, and direction was given to the city's legal counsel.
Thanks, Mr. Attorney. I appreciate that. This brings us to adjournment, the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 11th day of May 2021, is adjourned until Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much and have a safe trip home.